In the crucible of World War II, heroes were forged, but few faced trials as relentless or showed a spirit as unbreakable as Louis Zamperini. His was a life defined by extraordinary speed, unimaginable suffering, and a will that simply refused to yield. Born in 1917, Louis Zamperini's early life was far from heroic. A mischievous son of Italian immigrants in Torrance, California, he was a rebel, constantly in trouble, stealing, fighting, and testing every boundary. He was on a path to nowhere good. It was his older brother, Pete, who saw something more than trouble. He saw speed, raw, untamed energy. Pete pushed Louis to join the high school track team. Reluctantly, Louis agreed, and what happened next was astounding. That wild energy once used for mischief was now channeled into running. Louis became a sensation. He broke national records, earning him a spot on the 1936 U.S. Olympic team, competing in the 5,000-meter race in Hitler's Berlin Olympics. He was just 19 years old, though he didn't medal. His blistering final lap impressed even Hitler. A new Olympic dream was born for 1940. But history had other plans. The dream of the 1940 Olympics evaporated with the outbreak of World War II. Louis Zamperini, like so many young men, answered the call to duty. He enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces, becoming a bombardier on a B-24 Liberator bomber in the Pacific Theater. The Pacific was a brutal theater of war. Missions were long, dangerous, and often deadly. Louis and his crew, flying their bomber nicknamed Superman, completed many perilous sorties, including a particularly harrowing mission over Kwajalein Atoll, where their plane was riddled with bullet holes. After their bomber was damaged beyond repair, Louis and some of his original crew were assigned to a different B-24, known ominously as the Green Hornet. It was a notoriously faulty aircraft, a parts plane often used for search and rescue. For Zamperini, it was a dark premonition. On May 27, 1943, the Green Hornet took off on a search mission. Somewhere over the vast, empty Pacific, 2 engines failed. The bomber plummeted into the ocean, violently disintegrating on impact. Of the 11 men on board, only 3 survived the initial horrifying crash. Louis, his pilot Russell Allen Phillips, and tail gunner Francis McNamara, adrift in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. 3 men clinging to life on a tiny, dilapidated raft surrounded by an endless expanse of water and sky. Their ordeal had just begun. The heat was scorching, the thirst unbearable, and the hope of rescue faded with each passing day. They faced starvation. They battled relentless shark attacks, beating them back with oars. They survived a harrowing strafing run from a Japanese bomber, forcing them to dive into the shark-infested waters. Mac, weakened by injury and despair, began to deteriorate rapidly. Louis, with his Olympic-trained endurance, and Phil, with his quiet strength, tried to keep Mac alive, to keep their spirits from breaking. They talked of home, of food, of anything to distract from the gnawing hunger and the crushing solitude. But Mac's spirit broke first. He succumbed to his wounds and starvation on day 33. Weeks turned into a desolate eternity. They withered to skeletal frames, blistered by the sun, tormented by thirst. They miraculously survived a massive storm, believing it was the end. Louis, against all odds, managed to catch a bird and even a small shark to survive. His will to live was extraordinary. On day 47, emaciated, delirious, and barely clinging to life, they spotted land. It was just a speck, but it promised salvation. They paddled with their last ounce of strength only to be discovered by a Japanese patrol boat. Their ordeal on the raft was over. A new, far more brutal hell was about to begin. Louis and Phil were sent to Japanese prisoner of war camps, a descent into unimaginable cruelty. They faced starvation, disease, and relentless beatings. The Geneva Convention was ignored. But for Louis, the worst was yet to come. At Omori prisoners of war camp, Louis encountered his tormentor, Corporal Mutsuhiro Watanabe, known to the prisoners as the Bird, a psychopath whose sole purpose seemed to be breaking men. He singled out Zamperini, subjecting him to systematic, horrific abuse, hundreds of beatings, humiliation, psychological torture. The Bird tried everything to break Zamperini's spirit, to make him a propaganda tool. But Louis, the same defiant spirit who ran from the police as a boy, refused to yield. He found ways to resist, to steal, to endure. He found strength in the camaraderie of his fellow prisoners. Then, in August 1945, the war ended. The nightmare was finally over. Louis returned home a hero, but the victory was hollow. The physical pain was gone, but the mental wounds were fresh. Like many veterans, he suffered terrible post-traumatic stress disorder, though the world hadn't yet named it. He was consumed by alcoholism and a desperate, burning rage. Every night, he relived the torture, dreaming only of one thing: going back to Japan to find and kill the Bird. His marriage struggled under the weight of his torment. It was his wife, Cynthia, who convinced him to attend a Billy Graham crusade in 1949. Graham's message of faith sparked a memory in Louis, the prayers he made while adrift on the raft, promising to serve God if he survived. In that moment, Louis made a profound decision. He chose to live by the creed of forgiveness. This decision was not passive. It was an active mission. Louis Zamperini traveled back to Japan not for revenge, but for reconciliation. He visited the war criminal prisons and met face to face with many of the guards who had beaten him, offering his forgiveness. This act, he claimed, instantly ended his nightmares and healed his spiritual wounds. While he never managed to meet the Bird, who remained in hiding, Louis spent the rest of his long life working with troubled youth, founding the Victory Boys Camp. At 81, he was granted the ultimate symbolic victory. He returned to Japan to carry the Olympic torch for the 1998 Winter Games, running through the same town where he had once been imprisoned. The delinquent, the Olympian, the castaway, the prisoner. Louis Zamperini lived until 2014, a powerful symbol that the human spirit can always be redeemed and is truly unbroken.